Sean, you're never getting away from me. So what do you think? A boy or a girl first? I was tied up in my own home by the girl I'd spent my entire life tormenting. She'd locked me in a custom-built cage, a monument to her obsession. And why? Because after my childhood frenemy, Chloe Miller, shoved me down a flight of stairs, I woke up with the horrifying realization that I was just a character in a novel. The villain, to be exact. And she was the heroine, the one whose story arc required my entire family to be ruined and me to end up dead. So I'd done the only thing I could think of. I had my family call off our long-arranged engagement and fled, telling everyone I was eloping for love. I hid from her for 2 years, thinking I'd finally escaped the script. But 2 years later, she found me. She poured a glass of drugged whiskey down my throat. Her voice's soft, cruel whisper. Sean, I've got you. Sean, I hear you've been getting pretty close with that freshman from your econ class. Chloe's voice, laced with an acidity she probably didn't even notice, came from behind me. I was halfway down the main staircase in the arts building, doing my usual too cool for school slouch. I paused, turned, and leaned casually against the banister, arching an eyebrow at her. How'd you know? You got a crush on me or something? Keeping such close tabs. A blush instantly flooded her pale cheeks. She looked like a cat whose tail had just been stepped on. As if you do nothing but torture me. Why would I ever like you? Don't flatter yourself. I smirked and leaned in closer, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper only she could hear. Maybe not, but I think I'm about to get lucky with that freshman. She told me she's going to ask me out tomorrow. I think it's pretty much a done deal. Chloe was officially pissed. She gave my chest a light shove. Don't you know she has a boyfriend? You be the other guy. A homewrecker. I staggered back dramatically, playing up her push. Of course I know, I said, unable to resist being an ass. I have a simple policy. No strings, no promises, no mercy. Why would I turn down something that's being offered on a silver platter? Stop being such a pig. I'm serious. You're a goddamn player. Her eyes were red with fury now. She pushed me again, and this time, she put her weight into it. I was already faking being off balance on the stairs. Her shove sent me over the edge. Shit, I yelled, my arms windmilling. My body tilted backward, out of control, and the back of my head connected with the sharp corner of a marble step. The world spun, then went black. The last thing I heard before my consciousness completely evaporated was Chloe's panicked, tearful scream. I had a long, long dream. In the dream, time rewound. Familiar scenes flashed by like a movie montage. Me and Chloe. We were, for lack of a better term, childhood nemesis. There I was, snatching the sippy cup from her chubby hands and chugging the juice down myself, then giving her a little pat on the cheek that was definitely more of a slap. She'd wail, run to my parents, and I'd get a lecture. Then, while they weren't looking, I'd find a way to get back at her. In elementary school, I stole her homework, copied it, then tore it to shreds and threw it in the trash, leaving her to be scolded by the teacher in front of the whole class. She sat in front of me. I'd tie the ends of her long ponytail to the back of her chair and wait with glee for the pained yelp when she tried to stand up. She wasn't one to take it lying down, though. She'd grab a textbook and chase me around the classroom. I was faster, so I'd taunt her until she got close, then dive into the boys' bathroom, laughing at her for being too scared to follow. A few times, eyes blazing, she actually charged in, grabbed me by the ear, and dragged me out for proper beatdown. In middle school, I fought off some older kids who were trying to shake her down, getting my own ass kicked in the process. She patched up my bloody nose, laughing at me the whole time. After that, I think I stopped the physical bullying. I settled for verbal jabs, just to see her get flustered and indignant. When she got really mad, she'd grab my hand and bite down hard, leaving a perfect set of teeth marks. I'd yelp and tap her on the head. What are you, a puppy? Let go. In high school, she made me buy her tampons. The entire class found out, and I was the butt of the joke for a whole semester. The story even spread to the kids in other grades. These were my memories, as clear as if they'd happened yesterday. But the dream didn't stop there. Suddenly, a torrent of foreign, alien memories flooded my brain. A world that existed between the pages of a book. The memories felt more real than reality itself. In this book, Chloe Miller was the heroine, beautiful, kind, and resilient. And Haley, the freshman who was going to ask me out, her boyfriend, Josh Peterson, was the story's actual hero. And me, Sean Carter, I was the starter villain. The childhood bully who grows up to oppose the hero, only to be systematically destroyed by the main couple. My family goes bankrupt, and I end my story by jumping off a skyscraper. A stepping stone. No, I shot up in a hospital bed, gasping for air, my forehead slick with cold sweat. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the stark white sheets, the 4 in the back of my hand. It all told me one thing. I wasn't dead. I had fallen down the stairs and woken up to my future. Sean, you're awake? A gentle, concerned voice spoke beside me. I turned my head stiffly and saw Chloe sitting by the bed. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, her face a mask of worry and guilt. I'd seen that face 1,000 times over the last 20 years. But now all I could see was the truth. She wasn't the girl I grew up with anymore. She was the heroine, the source of my family's ruin, the reason for my future suicide. A bone-deep chill crawled up my spine. The instinct for survival crushed every other emotion. There was only one thought left in my head. Run. I had to run now. I ignored Chloe's worried questions and the doctor's recommendation to stay for another day of observation. I forced them to process my discharge. The vision of my family's ruin was a sword of Damocles hanging over my head. Every second I spent near her was another second closer to the abyss. I remembered the script perfectly. Haley Evans was supposed to confess her feelings for me this afternoon on the wooded path behind the science building. I had to be there, not to accept, but to extinguish this goddamn fuse before it was lit. When I got to the path, Haley was already waiting. She was wearing a white sundress, her long hair falling over her shoulders. She clutched a pink envelope in her hands, her cheeks flushed. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. Sean, you, Haley. I cut her off, my expression more serious and sincere than it had ever been in my life. Don't say it. I know. She froze, looking lost. I took a deep breath and began my performance. I know you're a great girl, but I can't. Your boyfriend, Josh, he really loves you. You two might have your little misunderstandings, but I shouldn't be the one to get in the middle of it. I'm just a footnote in your life. He's the one for you. Go back, talk to him. My heartfelt, life-saving monologue clearly stunned her. She just stared at me, speechless. I didn't give her time to think. I turned and walked away, not wanting to stay a second longer. As I turned, I caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. Behind a large oak tree not far away, a figure emerged. It was Josh Peterson, the story's original hero. His fists were clenched, his face a mask of anger, ready to charge in and start fight. But as he took in the scene and heard my words, the fury on his face froze, replaced by bewilderment, then confusion. And finally, was that a flicker of respect? The way he looked at me was no longer with the hatred of a rival, but with the cautious appreciation one gives an unexpectedly decent guy. I let out a long, silent breath. It worked. I had just severed the hero's reason to hate me. My chances of survival had just gone up. It was the first and most crucial step in changing my fate. From that day on, I initiated Operation Ghost Chloe. Her iMessages went unanswered. Her calls went straight to voicemail. If I saw her from a distance on campus, I'd immediately turn and walk the other way, even if it meant taking a 10-minute detour back to my dorm. My 180-degree turn didn't go unnoticed. She quickly picked up on my deliberate avoidance. At first, she just texted, asking what was wrong if I was still mad about the fall. I ignored all. Then, she started ambushing me outside my lecture halls, waiting for me at the dining hall, and blocking my path back to the dorm. Sean, what are you running from? She demanded, grabbing my arm. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her voice holding a note of panic and loss she herself didn't seem to recognize. I shook her hand off, my heart turning to stone. I couldn't afford to be weak. Weakness would lead me right back to the gaping maw of that terrible future. Nothing. I'm just tired of it, I said, looking at her coldly. Tired of it? We've known each other our whole lives, and now you're just tired of it. She looked at me in disbelief, her voice trembling. Her persistence was starting to terrify me. I was afraid the story's inertia would pull me back onto the predetermined track. I had to use stronger measures. She cornered me again, this time in an empty hallway of the humanities building. Sean, just tell me, what did I do wrong? She stared at me, refusing to let go. Looking into her wounded eyes, all I could see was my own body falling from a skyscraper. The survival instinct made me say the cruelest thing I could think of. Chloe, I said, my voice as cold as ice. Let's not talk anymore. From now on, let's just pretend we never knew each other. The words were a knife, and I plunged them right in her heart. I didn't dare look at her any longer. I turned and walked away, my pace quickening as if I were fleeing for my life. I didn't look back, so I didn't see it. Behind me, Chloe stood perfectly still. She watched my disappearing back, and the hurt, confusion, and pain in her beautiful eyes slowly receded. In their place, something else began to form, a chilling, dark, and possessive glint. She slowly, so slowly, lowered her head, and a strange smile curved her lips. In a voice only she could hear, she whispered, Sean, you belong to me. You think you can run away from me? I realized that just avoiding her wasn't enough. I had to tackle the problem at its root. Hiding out of my dorm, I dialed my father's number. Dad, I want to call off the engagement. The line was silent for a full 10 seconds before his roar erupted. Sean, what the hell are you talking about? You little bastard. Do you have any idea what you're saying? I do, I said, taking a deep breath to steady myself. The engagement to the Millers. It has to end. Now. Immediately. Give me one good reason. I'm in love with someone else. I threw out the lie I'd prepared. A girl from school. We're serious. I'm leaving with her. If you don't do this, you can consider me gone for good. The reason was explosive enough, final enough. I could almost picture my father on the other end, face purple with rage. I didn't give him a chance to yell at me again. Dad, this is our fault, so make sure the compensation is generous. Give them whatever they want to make it right, I continued. And one more thing. If the Millers ever run into trouble down the line, you have to promise me you'll help them out. Don't turn your back on them. That seemed to stun him. He probably never expected his screw-up of a son to be thinking about things like that. The anger in his voice slowly faded, replaced by a deep, weary resignation. You've really grown up, kid. For the worse. A heavy sigh. God save me from rich kids trying to prove a point. I suppose you running off to be a bum is better than you sticking around and bankrupting the company. His voice was tired. I'll wire you the money. Go to Miami. No one knows you there. It'll save your mother and me the headache of looking at you. Not long after I hung up, my phone buzzed. A bang notification popped up with a very long string of zeros. Without a moment's hesitation, I bought the first one-way flight to Miami and fled Boston that same night. Sitting on the plane, watching the city lights shrink below, I let out a long, slow breath. The air in Miami would be the air of freedom. I had finally escaped that damn script. The next 2 years were a blur of the life I'd always dreamed of. I rented a sprawling penthouse overlooking the ocean. I slept till noon, drove a sports car to the most exclusive beach clubs in the afternoon, and burned through cash at the hottest bars at night. I made token appearances at the local university to keep up the student pretense, flirting with whoever caught my eye. Money and alcohol numbed my nerves, almost making me forget the nightmare of my foretold future. I thought my life was finally off the rails, on a new, better track. What I didn't know was that while I was living it up, the Miller household had imploded. The news of the broken engagement hit them like a bomb. When Chloe found out I had left her for a freshman, even going so far as to elope, she locked herself in her room for 3 days. She refused to eat or drink, just sat on the floor, clutching a photo of us as kids. In the picture, I'd smeared cake frosting on her face. She was glaring at me, and I was grinning like an idiot. At first, her tears fell like broken pearls, soaking the photograph. But slowly, the tears dried up. The grief and pain in her beautiful eyes faded away, replaced by a chilling darkness. Love and hate twisted together in her heart, fermenting into a poison called possession. She looked at me in the photo, a strange smile slowly forming on her lips as she whispered, Sean, you're mine. You want to run? I just have to catch you. I thought I had escaped. In the haze of Miami's nightlife, I had almost convinced myself I was the master of my own fate. But I had no idea that, in a place I couldn't see, Chloe had become someone else entirely. I found out later just how formidable she'd become in those 2 years. After graduating, she took over a portion of her family's business empire. Her methods were ruthless, her demeanor ice cold. She became a shark, and the business world learned to fear her. She rejected every suitor from every prominent family. Her personal life a complete blank slate. No one knew that this stone-cold CEO would lock herself in her room every night to stare at a childhood photo. A photo where I was laughing thoughtlessly, and she was puffing her cheeks out in a pout. Her fingertips would trace the outline of my face, her longing festering into a bone-deep obsession. The gears of fate, however, always turn when you least expect it. One day, Chloe was inspecting a new high-end mall her family had just opened. She was dressed in a sharp, black power suit, her presence commanding. 2 black-suited bodyguards followed in her wake, and the crowds parted for her instinctively. Just then, a familiar figure entered her line of sight. It was Haley Evans, the girl I had used as my excuse. Chloe's steps faltered, her eyes locking on a Haley like a hawk. Her first instinct was to grab the girl and demand to know where I was. But before she could move, she saw something that made her pupils constrict. Haley was holding hands with a man, smiling sweetly up at him. Chloe recognized him, too. It was Josh Peterson, Haley's original boyfriend, the novel's intended hero. They were browsing for watches, acting for all the world like a couple head over heels in love. In that instant, Chloe's mind exploded. A grand, tragic opera of betrayal she had written and directed entirely in her own head came to a crashing finale. So that's how it is. Sean, you idiot. You threw everything away for this woman. You broke off our engagement. You let your name be dragged through the mud. You ran away. And for what? She just dumped you and went right back to her old boyfriend. You must be hiding in some dark corner right now, completely heartbroken and alone. The thought of me being cheated on, used, and abandoned sent a sharp pain through Chloe's heart, a pain that quickly fermented into a tidal wave of fury and a twisted, all-consuming desire to protect me. All her rage found its target, aimed squarely at the happy couple before her. Get them. Chloe's voice was laced with ice, devoid of all warmth. She didn't even raise her voice, just gave the cold command to her bodyguards. Beat the guy to a pulp. Don't touch her face. Without hesitation, the two men charged forward like tigers. Josh and Haley were knocked to the ground before they even knew what was happening. A rain of fists and feet descended on Josh. What are you doing? Somebody help. Haley screamed in terror. Josh curled into a ball on the ground, groaning in pain, completely blindsided. Mall security tried to intervene, but a single, glacial glare from Chloe froze them in their tracks. Chloe walked slowly towards them, looking down at the bruised and bleeding Josh with zero pity. Tell me, she demanded, where is Sean Carter? Josh, his face a mess, looked up in pure confusion. What? Sean who? I don't know him. Still stubborn. Chloe tilted her chin, and a bodyguard's foot stomped down hard on Josh's hand. AGHH. Josh screamed. I'll talk. I remember. Sean, that guy from a couple of years ago. Under the agony, the memory of the name finally surfaced. He looked at the terrifying woman standing over him and told her the truth. 2 years ago, Haley was going to ask him out, but he turned her down. He told me to get back together with her. He said he was just a footnote in our story. Josh's words struck Chloe like a bolt of lightning. She froze. The so-called rival, the betrayal, the heartbreak, it was all fake. From start to finish, it was all just an elaborate lie Sean had concocted to get away from her. The elopement wasn't for another woman. It was just to put distance between them. This truth was more painful, more unbearable than any betrayal. So, you weren't in love with someone else. You just wanted to escape me. Chloe stood there, the fire in her eyes slowly dying out, replaced by a terrifying, near-maniacal obsession. She looked at Josh, but it was as if she were looking right through him, to me miles away. A chilling smile crept across her lips. Sean Carter, you're not getting away from me. I had no idea that while I was living it up, a net designed just for me was being cast from 1,000 miles away. At that moment, I was holding court in a VIP booth at Mirage, Miami's most exclusive nightclub. A girl on each arm. I was soaking in the thumping beat of the music. Sean, man, you're living the dream. Killing it all on your own down here in Miami, a friend said, raising his glass. I swirled the whiskey in my tumbler, the ice clinking. You know it, bro. Carpe diem. Escaping Chloe, escaping that god-awful script. These last 2 years had been incredible. Just then, a small commotion stirred at the club's entrance. A woman walked in. She wore a fire engine red slip dress that clung to every curve, outlining a breathtaking figure. A cascade of dark waves fell over her shoulders. Her lips were painted a defiant red, and her eye makeup was both stunning and wild. The moment she appeared, it was like a spotlight had found her, silencing the noisy club for a heartbeat. My friend next to me let out a low whistle. Whoa, total knockout. You're tight, man. He wasn't wrong. I've been playing the field in Miami for 2 years, and a woman of her caliber was still a rare sight. I expected her to head to the dance floor or get scooped up by some other rich guy in a booth. But she didn't. She moved through the flashing lights and the sweaty crowd with a clear purpose, walking straight toward me. Every eye in the section was now on my booth, a mix of envy and admiration that fed my ego perfectly. She stopped in front of my table, looking down at me with a playful, challenging glint in her eyes. Is this seat taken? Her voice was a smoky, seductive rasp. For you, I said with a slick grin, patting the empty space beside me, always. She slid into the booth without a hint of hesitation, crossing her long, slender legs. I poured her a drink, thinking this was just another easy conquest. So, you here alone? She didn't answer. She just picked up her glass, leaned in close, and whispered in my ear, her warm breath sending a shiver down my spine. Have a drink with me? My heart hammered. I grabbed my own glass and clinked it against hers. My pleasure. I downed the strong whiskey in one smooth motion. She watched me, a faint, almost imperceptible smile on her lips, and drained her own glass. I thought it was the beginning of the hunt. I had no idea I was already the prey. A few drinks later, she purred, "One more." I didn't even think. I tipped my head back and finished another glass. But as this one went down, something felt wrong. A wave of dizziness, sharp and unfamiliar, crashed over me. It was faster and more potent than any drunk I'd ever felt. The club lights began to spin and blur into abstract streaks of color. The laughter of my friends sounded distant, as if coming from behind a thick wall of glass. I feel a little dizzy. I shook my head trying to clear it, but my body felt like it was filled with lead, my eyelids drooping against my will. I fought to focus on the bombshell's face, wanting to ask her what the hell was in that drink. In the last moments before my consciousness dissolved, I saw her face shifting in the strobing lights. The heavy, glamorous makeup seemed to be melting away, and the beautiful, unfamiliar face slowly morphed into one I knew from the deepest, most terrifying corner of my memory. The face I had run from for 2 long years. It was Chloe. The smile on her face was no longer seductive or playful. It was a sick, satisfied grin. I saw her leaning close, and her voice, the one I could never forget, whispered like a phantom in my ear. "Sean, got you." The back of my head rested on something soft. The air smelled of expensive lavender and vanilla. I pried my heavy eyelids open. There was no hangover headache, just a profound sense of exhaustion, a weakness that settled deep in my limbs. My eyes focused on an unfamiliar ceiling, where a magnificent crystal chandelier cast a soft, ambient light. I shot up, realizing I was in a ridiculously large, soft bed. The room was opulent, but everything about it felt wrong. There were no windows. 3 of the walls were a deep, polished black, smooth as glass, perfectly reflecting my own pale, horrified face. I scrambled off the bed and touched one of the cold walls. It was glass. I pressed my face against it, trying to see what was outside, but all I saw was my own reflection staring back. One-way glass. The thought struck me like a lightning bolt, and a cold dread washed over me. I'd been kidnapped, and the person who did it. I didn't even have to guess. Just then, a soft light bloomed in the darkness beyond the glass wall. A familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Chloe. She just stood there, wearing a silk nightgown, swirling a glass of red wine. Her face was lit with a blissful, obsessive smile, like an art collector admiring a priceless masterpiece they'd finally reacquired. Her eyes roamed over me, taking in every detail, from my terrified expression to my clenched fists. My confusion, my shock, my rage. It was all just a beautiful landscape for her to enjoy. "Chloe, are you insane? Let me out of here." I lunged at the glass, pounding on it with my fists, the impacts making dull, heavy thuds. But she just smiled, gently swirling her wine, as if she were watching a silent film. I understood then. The room was soundproof. My struggles and my screams were just a private show for her. I had to get out. I scanned the room. Besides the bed and a small table, it was empty. On the table was a beautifully prepared meal, still steaming. An idea formed in my mind. I sat down in the corner farthest from her, my back to the glass, and ignored the food completely. It was the only protest I had left. A hunger strike. Let's see what you do about that. Time crawled by. I don't know how long it was. My stomach growled, but I fought it, stubbornly holding my position. The door opened. Chloe came in. She changed into a sharp business suit. Behind her were 2 women in maid uniforms, tall and emotionless. She walked over to me, looked at my defiant back, and instead of getting angry, her lips curved into a tender, pitying smile that terrified me. "You have to eat. You'll make yourself sick." Her voice was as soft as silk. "If you won't eat, I'll feed you." Before I could react, the 2 maids flanked me, grabbing my arms. They lifted me like I was a child and slammed me down into the chair. I struggled, but their strength was inhuman. They pinned my arms and legs, immobilizing me completely. Chloe picked up a bowl of what looked like chicken soup, scooped up a spoonful, and brought it to my lips. "Open up." I turned my head away, my lips sealed shut. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes darkened. She used her free hand to pinch my jaw, her grip so strong I thought the bone would crack. My mouth was forced open. I still resisted, letting the soup she poured in dribble out of the corners of my mouth, staining my shirt and her hand. "Naughty," she whispered, setting the bowl down. I thought she was giving up, a tiny spark of triumph flaring in my chest. In the next second, she leaned down, her hand still crushing my jaw, while her other hand cupped the back of my head. And then she kissed me. My mind went blank. In that moment of shock, as my mouth fell open, she transferred a mouthful of the warm soup from her mouth to mine. The savory broth slid past my tongue and down my throat. The kiss was an act of absolute possession, a nauseating violation. She didn't pull away immediately. I felt the tip of her tongue gently lick my lips. Her warm breath was in my ear, her voice a soft, demonic whisper. There, that's a good boy. That kiss, that soup, shattered my last line of defense. I realized that in the face of this completely unhinged woman, any resistance would only be met with more intimate, more transgressive punishments. I stopped fighting, my body going limp in the chair. She smiled, satisfied. She picked up the bowl and began to feed me, spoonful by spoonful. I was a soulless puppet, mechanically opening my mouth, swallowing. Tears of humiliation mixed with the chicken soup as I choked it all down. That kiss and that bowl of soup annihilated my dignity and my will to fight. I sat like a marionette as she fed me the entire bowl. She seemed pleased with my compliance, and when I stopped fighting, a genuine smile appeared on her face. That room is too depressing. It's not good for you, she said, gently wiping my mouth as if I were her most precious treasure. From now on, you'll stay in my room. It has a bathroom and a balcony. You can have a little more freedom. She took my hand and led me out of that suffocating glass box and into her bedroom. It was much larger than the cage, decorated in soft, warm colors. A huge set of glass doors led to a quaint little balcony. Sunlight streamed in, casting a warm glow on the plush wool carpet. A faint flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe she really did just want to keep me close. She let go of my hand, giving me the illusion of freedom to inspect my new home. I made a beeline for the balcony, sliding the door open. Fresh air hit my face, but my heart sank the very next second. The entire balcony was enclosed by a thick, white-painted security grill. The steel bars were as thick as my wrist, the weld solid. It wasn't just me. A gorilla couldn't have broken out of this thing. Not giving up, I rushed in a bathroom. The small ventilation window was also sealed shut with a tight mesh of steel bars. My phone was long gone. This cozy, comfortable bedroom was just a prettier, more elaborate prison. The so-called freedom was just a larger cage. Do you like it? Chloe asked, hugging me from behind, her chin resting on my shoulder. My body stiffened. I didn't answer. She didn't seem to care. The next day, she had someone install a small camera in the room, aimed directly at the large, soft bed. This way, I can see you whenever I'm at work, she explained with a bright smile, her tone both innocent and monstrously cruel. I can talk to you, so you won't get bored. And so began the next phase of my captivity. At first, I treated the camera like it didn't exist. When she spoke to me through her phone, I turned my back to it, silent. But prolonged isolation is enough to drive a sane person mad. The room was terrifyingly quiet, the only sound my own breathing. After a while, I started to unconsciously anticipate the sound of her voice. It became my only form of entertainment, my only connection to the outside world. She would chat with me during her work breaks, always about her childhood. Sean, do you remember how you used to tie my hair to my chair? Her voice, tinged with laughter, came from the camera's speaker. I ignored her, lying motionless on the bed. I used to think you did it on purpose, she continued, her voice taking on a dreamy, certain quality. You wanted it so that when I stood up, my hair would get pulled, and I'd have to turn around and look at you. You just wanted my eyes to be on you, and only you, right? My heart stuttered. I clearly remembered it as just a dumb prank. But in her reality, it had become some kind of possessive, domineering declaration of love. And when you stole my bottle, it was because you wanted us to share something, wasn't it? So it would have your taste on it, and mine. These sick, twisted interpretations were like tiny needles boring into my brain. I started to wonder, was I really just a little monster back then? Or was there some other motive when I hadn't even been aware of myself? Her words spun me into a state of confusion. And every night, she would return right on schedule. She'd shower, and smelling of fresh soap, she'd slip into bed and wrap her arms around me from behind, holding me tight. She clung to me like an octopus, terrified I might vanish in my sleep. The first few nights, my body was rigid. I couldn't sleep. Her body heat, the sound of her breathing, it was like a brand on my skin, a constant reminder of my imprisonment. But gradually, terrifyingly, I got used to it. I got used to the warmth of her body, the faint, pleasant scent of her hair. In this suffocating prison, I started sleeping more and more soundly. Better, even, than any of those wild nights in Miami. A month passed like this. I started to think that, aside from her psychotically controlling nature, Chloe wasn't so bad. She remembered I hated cilantro. She bought me the latest gaming console to pass the time. When I woke up from a nightmare, she would awkwardly pat my back until I calmed down. One night, she was holding me, as usual, her even breathing a soft rhythm in my ear. I stared at the sliver of moonlight filtering through the curtains, my thoughts a tangled mess. I started to wonder if this really was all my fault. If I hadn't been such a jerk to her as a kid, if I hadn't just vanished on her, would she have ever become this person? For the first time, I began to doubt my entire escape the plot plan. This twisted stability almost made me forget I was a prisoner. Until that night. Chloe came home from work, but something was different. The usual soft smile she had when she saw me was gone, replaced by an unnerving seriousness. She didn't change out of her business suit or join me for dinner to chat about her day. She just stood in the bedroom doorway, watching me for a long moment before turning and calling for her bodyguards. Two large, imposing men walked in, their faces blank as they approached me. My stomach dropped. A powerful sense of foreboding washed over me. "What are you doing?" I asked, but before the words were fully out, they had seized my arms in an iron grip. I didn't even have time to struggle before they forced me down onto the large, soft bed. Then, they took out several strips of soft silk. With practiced efficiency, they tied my wrists and ankles to the bedposts, securing me in a spread-eagle position. Alarm bells screamed in my head. Fear, cold and overwhelming, drowned my senses. "Chloe, you're insane. Let me go." She walked slowly to the bedside, holding a small bowl filled with a dark, viscous liquid. Her face held an expression I couldn't decipher, a mixture of grim determination and rabid devotion. Her voice was a soft whisper. "Sean, drink this. Then we can be together forever. Get away from me." I thrashed against the silk restraints, the fabric cutting into my wrists. She ignored my struggles, pinched my jaw, and forced my mouth open. I clenched my teeth, but one of the bodyguards stepped in to help her. Against the two of them, I was powerless. The bitter concoction was poured down my throat. I choked and coughed violently, but most of it went down. Soon, an indescribable heat ignited low in my belly, spreading like fire through my veins. My skin grew hot, my blood felt like it was boiling, and what little rationality I had left was consumed by a primal, overwhelming desire. The world blurred, and the only thing in focus was Chloe's face, drawing closer and closer. She waved the bodyguards away. Then, right in front of me, she began to remove her clothes, piece by piece, before lowering herself onto me. That night was a fever dream, an absurd, depraved fantasy. The next day, I woke up feeling strangely good. The tension and fatigue that had plagued me for weeks were gone, replaced by a sense of release that permeated my entire body. But when I opened my eyes and took in the scene, I froze. The shocking splash of red on the sheets, and the sight of Chloe sleeping soundly beside me, her cheeks flushed with color, were silent testaments to what had happened last night. Dread, absolute and crushing, crashed over me. I had slept with the novel's heroine. Was there any chance of survival now? Just then, her long eyelashes fluttered, and she woke up. Seeing my horrified expression, she showed no guilt. Instead, she smiled, a picture of pure satisfaction, and leaned over to kiss my cheek. "You're awake?" She sat up, the silk sheets pooling around her waist, revealing the faint marks scattered across her pale skin. She explained the reason for last night's madness. Ever since I had eloped and broken the engagement, her parents had never stopped trying to find her a new match. For 2 years, she had put them off with every excuse she could think of. But yesterday, they had given her an ultimatum. They had found the perfect son-in-law from a good family, and she was required to meet him and finalize things. She'd had a massive fight with them and stormed out. On the drive home, she'd thought long and hard, and she decided to use the most direct, most extreme method possible to put an end to all her parents' plans. Once the rice is cooked, you can't uncook it. Hearing that she had her own pressures, that she'd been pushed into a corner, the softest part of my heart was unexpectedly touched. A flicker of empathy I couldn't control sparked to life. I looked at her, my mind a chaotic mess. It had already happened. She was my woman now. So screw the script, screw the damn death flags. I'd face whatever came next. If I was going to die anyway, what was the big deal? And if I had to go, taking the story's heroine down with me. It didn't seem like such a bad trade. To die at the hands of a beautiful woman. Hell, there were worse ways to go. After that night, I decided to just throw in the towel. Fighting back only earned me more humiliation, while submission seemed to buy me a sliver of peace. If you can't beat them, join them. I decided to try a new approach. I would play the part of the good husband. I wanted to see what would happen if I just went along with her. They say the way to a woman's heart is through her stomach. I decided to start with cooking. I looked up a bunch of recipes online, strode into the kitchen full of confidence, and prepared to give her a surprise. The surprise turned into a disaster. The steak was a hockey puck. The broccoli was a sickly yellow. The one bowl of tomato soup I'd managed to make was salty enough to kill a slug. I stared at the table of what could only be described as culinary biohazards, unable to even look at it myself. Just as I was about to dispose of the evidence, Chloe came home. She saw me in an apron, standing guiltily by the dining table, then glanced at the grotesquely colored dishes. She froze, and then her eyes lit up with a brilliance I'd never seen before. "You made this?" Her voice trembled with disbelief. I nodded, bracing for the mockery. I expected her to laugh, or have the housekeeper throw it all out. She didn't. She sat down carefully, picked up her fork, speared a piece of the blackened steak, and put it in her mouth without a moment of hesitation. I watched her, waiting for her to spit it out. But she just chewed, her throat contracting as she swallowed. Then, she looked up at me, her eyes sparkling, her face radiating a joy she couldn't contain. "It's delicious." She took a sip of the ridiculously salty soup, not even wincing. She just smiled even wider. "This is the best thing I've ever eaten in my life." In that moment, something inside my chest cracked. I knew she was lying. The food was inedible. But the pure, unadulterated happiness on her face, that wasn't fake. Spurred on by her encouragement, I seemed to unlock some hidden talent. My cooking skills improved by leaps and bounds. And Chloe transformed from a domineering ice queen of CEO into a little woman who came home on time every day, her eyes full of anticipation, waiting for me to feed her. She would sit at the table, chin in her hands, and watch me cook. Then she would eat every last bite of whatever I made. Seeing her look so satisfied, the resentment I held for being her prisoner started to dissolve without me even realizing it. She saw the change in me. The deep-seated anxiety in her seemed to be fading. One day, she had the camera in the bedroom removed. A few days after that, she stopped locking me in the bedroom, allowing me to wander freely throughout the entire villa. Then, about a month later, as she was leaving for work one morning, she pressed a key into my palm. "If you want to go for a walk, go ahead. Just be back in time for dinner." I held the cold, metal key, a storm of emotions swirling inside me. I was being allowed outside. At first, I just went to the nearby grocery store, but it was impossible to avoid people entirely. That day, when I came back, Chloe greeted me with her usual hug. But as she nuzzled my neck, her body went still. She pulled back, and the smile in her eyes instantly turned to ice. "This perfume, it's not mine." Her voice was quiet, but it was laced with danger. "Which woman was it?" My heart skipped a beat. "It was just the cashier at the market," I explained quickly. "I got a little too close, it must have just rubbed off." She didn't say anything. She just stared at me, the possessiveness in her eyes so thick it was almost tangible. That night, she pushed me onto the bed and punished me with a fierce, uncompromising passion. She left a trail of marks all over my body, covering the faint, foreign scent with her own. The next day, I woke up with an aching back, my whole body feeling like it had been taken apart and reassembled. I lay on my stomach, gritting my teeth, and cursing her in my head for being such a jealous psycho. But as I cursed her, a smile crept onto my lips. This feeling of being so fiercely wanted, of being someone's entire world. It wasn't half bad. One day, Chloe did something unheard of. She didn't go to the office. I just put lunch on the table when she came downstairs. She was wearing a cream-colored sundress I'd never seen before and had on light makeup. She looked radiant and gentle. "Not going to work today?" I asked, surprised. "Nope," she said, walking over and naturally straightening my collar, a mysterious smile playing on her lips. "Something more important today. I'm taking you to a wedding." "A wedding? Whose?" I asked casually. She was being coy, just winking at me. "You'll see when we get there. It's someone you would never expect." I grumbled to myself. Besides her, I didn't know anyone in this city. The wedding was held at a 5-star hotel on the waterfront. The lawn was covered in white roses, and balloons and ribbons fluttered in the breeze. It was a lavish, romantic affair. As I followed Chloe into the venue, my eyes were immediately drawn to the giant wedding photo displayed at the entrance. In the photo, a man in a sharp suit and a woman in a white gown were beaming with happiness. The moment I recognized their faces, I froze on the spot, feeling like I'd been struck by lightning. The groom was Josh Peterson, the novel's original hero. The bride was Haley Evans, the freshman who had tried to ask me out, the girl I'd used as my shield. My brain buzzed, unable to process what I was seeing. What the hell was going on? The original hero was marrying a throwaway character who wasn't even a proper villainess? I instinctively looked at Chloe, who was watching my reaction with great interest. "Now you see how I found out you were lying, don't you?" she said softly, a note of triumph in her voice. A chill went down my spine as the memory of her exposing my lie, followed by my kidnapping and imprisonment, came flooding back. I looked at her nervously, afraid she was about to bring up the past and punish me in some new, inventive way. I saw them holding hands at the mall that day, she said, slipping her arm through mine in a clear gesture of ownership. Your pathetic eloping for love excuse fell apart pretty quickly after that. I managed a dry laugh, not daring to respond. They actually invited you, you know. I blinked. They did? I never got a message. Chloe pulled my phone out of her purse and dangled it in front of me, a look on her face that was both imperious and playfully smug. That's because your phone has always been under my surveillance. She grinned like a cat that had gotten the cream. I saw the invitation and replied for you. I was going to say no, but then I thought it would be much more fun to bring you here to see it for yourself. I stared at her, momentarily speechless. This feeling of having my fate held so tightly in someone else's hands should have been suffocating. But coming from her, it had a kind of twisted sweetness. My gaze drifted back to the couple in the distance, who were now receiving blessings from their guests. Then I looked at Chloe, who was clinging to my arm. It suddenly dawned on me that the script for this world had probably been blown to smithereens the moment I fell down those stairs. The original hero was with a minor character, and I, the villain destined for ruin, was with the original heroine. A wild thought popped into my head. Maybe Haley was now the world's new heroine. Had the so-called corrective force of the plot, the protagonist's halo, shifted to her? If that was true, did that mean I was safe? That being with Chloe wouldn't trigger some inevitable, tragic ending. The thought settled a weight that had been sitting on my chest for years. A sense of relief, lighter than air, washed over me. Chloe seemed to read my mind. She leaned close to my ear and teased, her voice just loud enough for me to hear over the music. So, the girl you almost had is now someone else's bride, and you're the one who pushed her right to him. She paused. So what does that make you? A great wingman, or just a terrible judge of character? Hearing her joke, the last of my tension evaporated. I copied her, leaning in close to her ear and replying in a deliberately regretful tone. A huge loss, that's what. I should have sealed the deal first. Could have pushed her away after. The words were barely out of my mouth before two soft thumps landed on my chest. Chloe glared at me, pretending to be angry, a blush rising on her cheeks. You dare, she pouted. She balled her fists and tapped my chest again. You belong to me. Don't even think about cheating. I'll break both your legs. The punches were soft, completely lacking in force. It was less of a threat and more like a kitten pawing at me, full of flirtatious warning. Josh and Haley's wedding felt like a declaration. The world that was supposed to revolve around them had completely collapsed, only to be rebuilt in a way I could never have imagined. Not long after, Chloe and I had our own lavish wedding. On that day, I stood at the altar, watching Chloe's father walk her down the aisle toward me. She was breathtaking in her white gown, her face under the veil so beautiful it made my heart ache. In that moment, our entire lives flashed before my eyes, me stealing her bottle, pulling her hair, her chasing me around the yard. And finally, the image of her in my prison, her eyes a mix of terrifying obsession and profound love. I thought to myself, this derailed script is pretty damn great. At the reception, our parents sat at the same table, the atmosphere surprisingly cheerful. Chloe's dad, a glass of champagne in hand, grinned like a sly fox. He clapped my father on the shoulder. You know, Carter, he boomed, I have to hand it to your family. You guys are generous to a fault. First, you shower us with gifts for the engagement. Then, you pay us a fortune to break it off. And after all that, my daughter still ends up with your son. It's like you were determined to give us your money one way or another. My dad's face instantly turned beet red. He jabbed a finger in my direction. Don't look at me. It was this little punk. I told him not to do it, but he insisted. Made up some nonsense about running away. Told me to look after your family. He was practically gift wrapping our money for you. The guests roared with laughter. My mom quickly intervened, placing a piece of lobster on my dad's plate. Oh, honey, let it go. It's a happy day. Kids will be kids. They have their little fights. Besides, we're one family now. The money is all staying in the family, isn't it? I looked at them all, a warmth spreading through my chest. Life after the wedding was nothing like I'd expected. I thought I'd have to learn the ropes of the family business. But Chloe, flexing the muscles of her original heroine template, revealed a staggering talent for it. She ruthlessly merged our two family empires, split the shares 50-50, and then promptly kicked me out of the office. Her reasoning? You staying home and raising the kids is the single greatest contribution you can make to this company. So I happily embraced my new role as a stay-at-home dad, fully committing to the powerful wife, trophy husband lifestyle. Time flew. Our daughter, Ellie, was already 2. One sunny afternoon, I was sitting on the floor with Ellie. She was happily digging into a small piece of cake, a forbidden treat. I scraped a bit of frosting on my finger and held it out for her. Looking at her sweet, chubby face, I began to impart my life's wisdom. Ellie, listen to Daddy. Someday, when you're in school, if there's a little boy who teases you all the time, who plays tricks on you, who always seems to want you to chase him. I pause for dramatic effect. You remember this. You run in the other direction. Those boys are bad news. They'll try to trick you and lock you in their house, and then gobble you up until there's nothing left. Ellie, her face smeared with frosting, looked up at me and nodded with grave seriousness. Okay, Daddy, I get it. All boys are bad except for you, Grandpa, and Pop-Pop. I'll stay away from all of them, she declared in her tiny voice, patting my chest with a sticky hand to seal her promise. Mommy says no cake, but Daddy gives me cake. I love you the most, Daddy. I beamed, stroking her soft hair. That's my girl. I wonder which good-for-nothing charmer used that exact strategy to trick me, Chloe said without looking up from her laptop on the couch. She gave me a wry, exasperated look. Hey, I wasn't a charmer. I was a handsome devil, and not good for nothing. I shot back. Ellie immediately jumped to my defense. Mommy, don't be mean to Daddy. Daddy's not a bad man. He gives me yummy cake. Chloe laughed, a sound that filled the room. You little traitor. Go ahead and eat it. Just wait until you get chubby. Then Daddy won't like you anymore. I pulled our daughter into a tight hug. Don't you worry, Ellie, I announced loudly. You could eat all you want. You could be as round as a basketball, and Daddy would still love you most of all. Reassured, my little girl snuggled into my arms and devoted her full attention to demolishing the rest of her cake.